All right, so are you ready to dive into some pretty fascinating territory today?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're going to be taking a look at an excerpt from an interview on the Joe Rogan Experience
Okay, cool.
with Donald Trump,
Oh, wow.
back when he was on the campaign trail in 2020.
Interesting.
It's not every day.
Yeah.
You get a presidential candidate riffing on government secrets and UFOs, right?
Sure. Yeah, you don't really see that every day.
And what's really intriguing here is this wasn't some carefully staged press conference or anything.
Right.
This is Joe Rogan we're talking about.
Sure.
You know, the conversation's going to go in all sorts of unexpected directions.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes it a really interesting lens, I think, to kind of examine how Trump approached these topics, you know?
Yeah.
Was he playing to the audience, or do we get a glimpse of something a little bit more genuine?
Yeah, it's hard to say, isn't it?
Well, let's start with the JFK files.
Okay.
Trump makes a pretty bold claim right out of the gate. Says he was pressured by people in his administration to not fully release the remaining classified documents.
Huh.
Specifically mentions Mike Pompeo.
Interesting.
And he drops this, like, tantalizing hint, right?
Yeah.
That there are national security concerns and sensitivities around individuals who are still alive.
Right.
But then he throws in this promise, too, if he wins a second term, he'll open the files. He calls it a cleansing.
Wow. That's a very, very loaded term.
Like he's dangling this big reveal, you know?
Yeah.
What could be in those files that's so sensitive all these years later?
Well, you know, historically, there's been this push and pull around the JFK files.
Yeah.
Some argue the public has a right to know everything.
Uh-huh.
And that, you know, continued secrecy just fuels conspiracy theories.
Makes sense.
But then there's that counter argument.
Yeah.
That some information has to stay classified to protect national security or ongoing investigations or the privacy of individuals involved.
Right. So you could imagine the types of things that might be redacted in those files, right?
Like names of informants,
For sure.
intelligence gathering methods, information that could impact diplomatic relations,
Yeah.
or even put national security at risk.
Absolutely.
So putting yourself in the shoes of somebody who's been following this case for years,
Okay.
what do you make of Trump's claim? Is he genuinely concerned about national security, or is this a calculated political move?
Well, I think it's important to remember that politicians are always operating within this framework of messaging and strategy.
Right.
So their words are shaped by a lot of things: public opinion, political alliances, even their own personal convictions.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit now to the UFO conversation.
Okay.
It's almost comical how Rogan just seamlessly pivots from JFK to aliens.
Right.
Which, honestly, that's kind of how those conversations tend to flow, right?
Well, it's true.
So it's fascinating to watch Trump navigate that transition.
Okay.
At first, he's skeptical.
Yeah.
Says UFOs have never been his thing.
But then he admits he's talked to multiple pilots who've reported strange sightings.
Yeah.
And this is where I think it gets really interesting.
Okay.
He talks about these pilots describing a round object moving at 4 times the speed of an F-22
Wow.
without a heat signature.
That's pretty strange.
Yeah, that's not your average weather balloon.
Definitely not.
And this actually is a larger pattern
Really?
of UFO sightings that are reported by pilots and military personnel.
Interesting.
These reports often describe objects exhibiting capabilities that just seem to defy our current understanding of physics.
So we're not just talking about fuzzy lights in the sky here.
No.
We're talking about objects that are maneuvering in ways that our technology,
Right.
at least our publicly acknowledged technology, just can't do.
Exactly. And that's why, despite attempts by scientists and skeptics to kind of explain these sightings away as misidentified aircraft or natural phenomena,
Right.
many of them remain unexplained.
Very interesting.
So it's like watching Trump's skepticism waver a bit as Rogan presents these more compelling accounts. He even says there's no reason not to think that aliens exist.
Wow.
And he talks about interviewing these solid, beautiful people who believe in extraterrestrial activity.
So do you think he's genuinely changing his mind there? Or is he reading the room, so to speak?
I don't know. It's tough to separate genuine belief from political strategy in a setting like this.
Especially in a setting like that, yeah.
And that's what I think makes this interview so thought-provoking, you know?
Yeah, I can see that.
It raises questions about how politicians communicate about these sensitive or controversial topics.
Right.
Are they trying to lead public opinion, or are they following it?
It's hard to say.
Okay,
Right.
let's focus on one specific incident that Trump brings up.
Okay.
The Commander David Fravell encounter in 2004 off the coast of San Diego.
I've heard of this one.
He lays out the details in a way that suggests he's really thought about this.
Okay.
What jumps out at you about this incident?
Well, I think what's really fascinating about it is the combination of evidence.
Yeah.
This object goes from 50,000 feet to 50 feet in a second,
It's incredible.
creates a disturbance in the water, shows up on multiple radar systems.
Wow.
We're not talking about just one pilot seeing something strange out there.
Yeah.
We're talking about multiple witnesses and different types of data corroborating the story.
This is considered one of the most credible UFO sightings in recent history.
I can believe that.
But here we are all these years later, still scratching our heads.
Exactly. And that's what makes these mysteries so alluring, isn't it?
It's true.
They force us to confront the limits of our knowledge.
Yeah.
And grapple with the possibility that maybe we don't have all the answers.
Yeah, it's a very humbling thought. It really does feel like we're living in a science fiction movie sometimes,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
All these blurred lines between what we thought we knew and what's actually possible.
That's what's so captivating about it, wouldn't you say?
It's true.
This whole unknown territory.
Yeah.
It's like a launch pad for human curiosity and invention.
Thinking about everything we've talked about,
Yeah.
what stands out to you as the most intriguing piece of this whole puzzle?
Well, for me, it's that subtle shift in Trump's perspective.
Uh-huh.
When Rogan starts bringing up compelling evidence,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder, are we seeing a genuine evolution in his thinking, or is it a calculated response to a receptive audience?
That's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
That tension between genuine belief and, political maneuvering.
Right.
It's like a constant undercurrent in this interview.
Absolutely. And it gets right to the heart of, I think,
Yeah.
the challenge we face when we're trying to make sense of these really complex topics.
Right.
How do we separate fact from fiction?
How do we even know who to trust?
It's almost like we need a new set of tools
Yeah.
for navigating this information landscape.
Especially with these topics, right?
Oh, yeah.
JFK, the assassination, the UFOs.
So much speculation.
Where there's so much misinformation out there.
Frogly. We need to develop that critical thinking muscle.
Yeah.
That ability to evaluate information,
Uh-huh.
weigh different perspectives without jumping to conclusions.
If you were advising someone who's just starting to explore these topics,
Okay.
what would be your, top piece of advice for them?
I would say approach it like a detective.
Oh, that's good.
Gather evidence from a variety of sources,
Mhm.
consider different motives,
Yeah.
be willing to adjust your theories as you go,
Uh-huh.
and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask questions.
That's such great advice.
Yeah.
And speaking of asking questions,
Mm.
this whole deep dive has me thinking, what would I have asked Trump
Right.
if I was sitting in that room with Rogan?
Yeah, it's a thought exercise, isn't it?
It is.
And I think that's a great takeaway for listeners as well.
Yeah.
Don't just passively absorb this information. Engage with it.
Right.
Challenge it. And most importantly, form your own opinions
Yeah.
based on careful consideration of the evidence.
We've only scratched the surface here today.
It's true.
But hopefully this deep dive has given you some new insights and sparked your curiosity.
Yeah.
To maybe go and explore these topics further.
There's a whole world of information out there just waiting to be discovered.
Isn't that exciting?
It is. It really is. And who knows what mysteries we might uncover if we keep asking the right questions.
So until next time,
Yeah.
keep diving deep. It's funny, isn't it?
What's up?
I keep thinking back to that feeling of living in a science fiction movie.
Oh, yeah.
With all these blurred lines
It's true.
between what we thought we knew and what might actually be possible.
That's what I think is so captivating about it,
Yeah.
It's like this whole unknown territory just sparks something in us.
Definitely.
That human curiosity
It
of
does.
invention.
Well, thinking about everything we've discussed,
Yeah.
what stands out to you as the most intriguing
That's a good question.
piece of the puzzle?
Yeah. For me, it's that shift in Trump's perspective, as Rogan brings up the evidence, makes you wonder, is it genuine
Right.
or is it calculated?
Is it a little bit of both, maybe?
And that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
That tension between genuine belief and political maneuvering
Right.
is such a fascinating thread to pull on.
It is, and it gets right to the heart of the challenges we face
For sure.
when we try to make sense of these really complex topics.
Exactly.
How do we separate fact from fiction?
Right. How do we know who to trust?
And especially with these topics,
Oh, yeah.
JFK, the assassination UFOs,
Right.
where there's so much speculation already.
So much misinformation.
We almost need a new set of tools
We do.
to navigate this information landscape.
We have to develop that critical thinking.
Uh-huh.
Weigh different perspectives without jumping to conclusions.
It's a skill.
It is.
So if you were advising someone who's just starting to explore these topics,
Okay.
what would you tell them?
Well, I always say approach it like a detective.
Oh, that's good.
Gather your evidence from a variety of sources. Consider the different motives.
Right.
Be willing to adjust your theories as you go.
Sure.
And I think most importantly, just don't be afraid to ask questions.
I love that.
Yeah.
And speaking of questions,
Yeah.
this whole deep dive has got me thinking,
Yeah.
what would I have asked Trump?
Oh, yeah.
If I was in the room?
It's such a good thought exercise.
It really is.
And I think it's a good takeaway for everyone listening.
Yeah.